Welcome to today's Explainer. We hear unemployment numbers thrown around literally all the time on the news, but rarely do we actually stop to look under the hood at how the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the BLS, actually measures them. Well, today, we're unpacking the real mechanics. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start by decoding the labor market, calculating the real numbers, establishing the difference between natural and cyclical unemployment, and finally, looking at the job search paradox. Section 1. Decoding the labor market. Sorting the U.S. adult population. First up, the BLS filters for the employed. And what's actually kind of fascinating here is just how broad this definition really is. It casts a huge net that includes part-time workers, self-employed individuals, and even those who are just temporarily absent from their jobs because of a vacation, an illness, or bad weather. Basically, if you're attached to a job, you're employed. Next, we have the unemployed category. Now, the crucial point here, and a lot of people miss this, is that you don't automatically fall into this group just because you don't have a job. You must have actively tried to find employment in the previous 4 weeks, or be waiting to be recalled from a layoff. The active search is the absolutely key variable here. Finally, anyone left over is classified as not in the labor force. So we're talking about full-time students, homemakers, and retirees. If you aren't working and you aren't actively looking, the BLS sets you aside into this third bucket. So let's look at a real-world snapshot from January 2016. Out of a total adult population of 252.4 million people, the BLS stacks the employed and unemployed together to create the total labor force, while the not-in-labor force group sits entirely on its own. To really wrap our heads around the scale, notice that massive block of 150.5 million employed citizens. I mean, it absolutely dwarfs that tiny sliver of 7.8 million unemployed. Meanwhile, a highly significant 94.1 million adults aren't in the labor force at all. Section 2. Calculating the real numbers, the math behind the headlines. All right, so to find that famous headline unemployment rate, we first combine the employed and the unemployed into a single metric, the labor force. Then we simply divide the number of unemployed individuals by that total labor force and multiply by 100 to get our percentage. Applying this to our January 2016 data, so that's 7.8 million unemployed divided by a labor force of 158.3 million, gives us an unemployment rate of 4.9%. Boom! That right there is the number that drives stock markets and political campaigns. But wait, there's another metric that's honestly just as vital, the labor force participation rate. This simply calculates the fraction of the total adult population that has chosen to actively participate in the labor market. You just divide the total labor force by the total adult population. Doing the math for January 2016 reveals that exactly 62.7% of the U.S. adult population were participating in the labor market. So almost 2/3 of adults were either working or actively looking, leaving about a third on the sidelines. Section 3. Natural versus cyclical unemployment. Establishing the baseline. Let's take a look at historical data going all the way back to 1960. Notice how the actual reported unemployment rate constantly fluctuates, spiking up and down. But look at what it fluctuates around, a smooth, highly stable baseline cutting right through the middle. This defines a really stark contrast. Cyclical unemployment represents those short-term, year-to-year economic recessions and booms, the jagged spikes. But the natural rate, that stable baseline, is the normal, permanent, long-run rate. Basically, even in the best of times, there is always unemployment in the economy. Section 4. The job search paradox, the core of the data. To understand why that natural rate literally never hits zero, we have to look at market mechanics. Economists attribute this baseline to 4 main factors: structural unemployment from minimum wage laws, the market power of unions, companies paying premium efficiency wages to boost productivity, and most notably, what we call frictional unemployment. Frictional unemployment is simply the time it takes to properly match a worker's unique tastes and skills with the right job. It's not about a lack of jobs, it's about the search process. I mean, you wouldn't want a highly trained software engineer rushing to take a job as a barista just to avoid a few weeks of unemployment, right? This frictional unemployment is completely inevitable because our economy is highly dynamic. Look at this massive job churn between 2004 and 2014. We saw huge job losses in manufacturing, down 2.1 million jobs. But those losses were offset by explosive growth in sectors like healthcare, which added 2.6 million jobs. The economy is literally always shifting beneath our feet. As workers leave dying industries and search for new roles in booming sectors where they're much more valuable, they experience temporary joblessness. This necessary evolution guarantees a constant, frictional level of unemployment in the data. It's the friction of progress, ultimately leading to higher long-term productivity and higher living standards for everyone. But this brings us to a fascinating economic policy dilemma. We obviously want to protect people while they search for these better matches, but does providing a financial safety net actually cause more people to remain jobless for longer? Let's look at the data. Let's analyze unemployment insurance. This is a government program designed to reduce the immense hardship of job loss by partially protecting a worker's income while they're actively searching for their next role. But we always have to remember one of the core principles of economics. People respond to incentives. Because unemployment benefits strictly stop the moment a new job starts, the system inherently alters human behavior. The data actually confirms the paradox here. Unemployment insurance inadvertently increases frictional unemployment because workers might devote a little less effort to searching and are more likely to turn down unattractive offers. In fact, the probability of finding a job spikes sharply the exact moment benefits run out. Yet, many economists argue this is actually a good thing. Giving workers time to find a perfect match boosts overall economic efficiency. And remember, while we focused heavily on this job search today, those other factors we mentioned earlier, like minimum wage laws, union power, and companies paying efficiency wages to improve worker health and effort, they all play a crucial role in keeping that natural baseline above zero. So I'll leave you with this final query. Think back to that baseline that never hits zero. Is this persistent, naturally occurring unemployment simply the necessary, unavoidable operating cost of a healthy, dynamic, and compassionate society? Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll see you next time.